Hi, Facebook family and friends, and also my YouTube family and friends. We are live on Facebook this wonderful April 28th. I am Suzette Martinez Valderes, your candidate for State Assembly in the 38th Assembly District. And man, has it been an exciting week? We've been busy at the preschool. We applied for a PPP loan. Finally, it was a bit of a debacle. So it is very timely that my next guest, who is a longtime friend of mine, Gil Gonzalez, is going to be joining me in just a moment here. And we're going to talk everything SBA, PPP, and I'll say the name, the Paycheck Protection Program. We all know it as PPP, the economic, the EIDL, the SBA, and every acronym under the sun. We're going to talk about that because as small business owners, we're very busy running our businesses. And when the coronavirus hit, our worlds have changed. So I figured I'd bring Gil Gonzalez, who, let me see if I can bring him on here. Gil, how are you? Welcome.
Well, thank you, Suzette, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining me. And thank you thank you from me, but on behalf of my district and the businesses in my district, as you are very well aware, and I am as a small business owner, we've been in this safer at home or stay at home order for 42 days now. And life feels like it literally changed overnight and our economy has halted. And if you're not an essential business, you're completely shut down right now. And if you're an essential business, it's still really tough. So your background, tell me a little bit about your background. You are an economic incentives expert, but you're more than that. You've had a background. You're a former gubernatorial appointee, and you're the CEO and founder of a prize. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So first off, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Any chance I get to help small business owners, I'm definitely interested in doing so. So my background, in short, is in economic development. I had worked in Los Angeles with the mayor of Los Angeles for a few years. Also worked for Bob Dutton, who was in the state senate at the time, through the Capital Fellows program. And then, as you mentioned, I did some work with Governor Brown as one of his appointees. So my background really is in economic development 101. How does the state or a community attract and retain jobs? And then by virtue of that, my specialty and really kind of expertise has become in economic incentives. And that word gets tossed around quite a bit because you all have probably heard of Amazon HQ2 or these big companies getting these big government dollars and government dollars. Really, that's my specialty. However, when I left the governor's office, I pivoted and created a tech program and company that provides a single access for small businesses to actually access many of the same incentive programs that big businesses do at a fraction of the cost. And we help companies not only identify the programs, but also help them apply with the program. So that's what we're working on right now. And we've been quite busy, as you can imagine. So.
Yeah, I mean, my background has actually been in nonprofit management for the last decade, and I now operate a small preschool in Sylmar. I have, anywhere between 11 and 14 employees, depending on my enrollment. And I, consider myself a small business. And just looking at the actual numbers, when you look at small business from the macro level of, the U.S., there are about 21.5 million small businesses across the U.S. And in California, there are, 3.6 million. And in California, that 50% of those small businesses employ people from 1 person to 100 people. For me, 11 people is very different than 100 people.
That's right.
And I know, like I have 11 people. I am the CEO. I'm the administrator. I pull weeds. I do marketing. Like I plunge toilets. I do everything. Welcome to the life of a small business owner, right?
That's right.
So there have been, I think that we were very lucky that Congress knew right away with this pandemic and the effects on the economy and the shutdown of the economy that they were going to have to do something pretty rapidly for the workforce and for business. And there have been 4 phases of the CARES Act or the stimulus. What has each of these phases meant for small businesses, and what economic impact does small business have on our economy in the U.S. and here in California?
Yeah, so I'll start with the second question because that's the most important question. So the second question is in the U.S. small businesses and small businesses by definition by the Small Business Administration is companies that have 500 or fewer employees. Now, most of us would think if you have 100 employees, that's a pretty decent sized business, but actually that's still considered a small business by SBA terms. But companies that fall under that small business definition represent about 97% of employer firms in the United States. So you have to imagine just the pure volume, the pure number of businesses that are out there. There's just a ton, as you indicated in your previous fact. So when Congress realized that this economy was going to affect your daycares, your restaurant owners, your small businesses just across America, they had to act quickly. So, as you said, there's been really 2 main drivers, and when I say drivers, it's mostly funding that's coming to small businesses. The first was the $350 billion. Actually, I think the official number was 349. That was passed just over 7 weeks ago, or close to 7 weeks ago, as part of the CARES Act, and then most recently was the $484 billion package. 321 billion of that is actually coming to small businesses through the PPP program and EIDL. We're going to talk a little bit about what those 2 programs are in a minute, but I want to make a very pointed comment. You said, what is the importance of small businesses in the U.S.? Not only do they represent 97% of employer firms, but most small businesses, and we're talking close to 70%, according to some studies that I've read, have missed at least 3 payrolls because they just don't have the funds to make payroll, right? So the trickle down effect is when you miss payroll, you're laying off employees. And when you're laying off employees, that means that those folks are going on the unemployment rolls, they're looking for social services. So the impact on not helping small businesses at this juncture will be absolutely devastating. That's why Congress acted so quickly, thankfully, and hopefully there's more to come, quite frankly. So,
right. So now we're going to get a little bit into the acronyms and the actual, the application process for what we now are calling PPP, the economic injury disaster loan, the cash advance. All of these things that came through for small business during with the CARES Act. So I'm a nonprofit, but I run a small business. And when I heard that there was going to be help, it was really exciting. And there was specifically going to be help for small business. It was really exciting because I was worried, like, okay, we can take care of March payroll, but we get into April, it's scary. We get into May, and if I don't have something coming down, then we're going to close. So really early on, I applied on the SBA website, I think really, really, really early on, and then they changed it and changed it and changed it. So it's been frustrating as a small business owner because I'm trying to do my due diligence and make sure I'm taking care. I mean, we're open to serve the essential workforce.
Sure.
Can you explain to me a little bit about what the application process has been, what these programs are, what the application process has been, and how has it changed today?
Yeah, so let's start with EIDL because that one is a little easier to explain. However, it's turning into being a little bit more complicated because some of the applications have changed, as well as some of the grant award amounts have changed. And then also, quite frankly, it's just taking much longer for anybody to get approved for an actual loan, which means money in the bank, right? So EIDL, Congress allocated monies to the SBA, the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration is the organization that is accepting applications, administering, and then allocating funds for the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, okay? The first week that the program opened, you could tell that there was some challenges in terms of getting the infrastructure, the application process up, but it was essentially you filled out about 3 or 4 different forms, you uploaded them to a box link, and then you didn't get any sort of confirmation or the like. It just kind of disappeared, right? So that has changed over the past 4 weeks, and now you go to the SBA disaster loan program site, the EIDL link, and then you apply formally on that program or on that link. But to talk about process for a second there, first, what is EIDL? How do you apply? And then what to expect once you do apply? So EIDL is any company that was in business before January 30th of this year who have had a negative economic impact from COVID-19. So that is a large, vast majority of small businesses, right? The program requirements and thresholds is that you can apply up to $2 million. The repayment schedule on that is up to 30 years at 3.75% money. And you can use the funds for everything from payroll, equipment, mortgage payments, rent, mortgage interest, employee benefits, and the like. So it has to be spent towards obviously operating and running your business, okay? There is no forgiveness portion to this loan. Okay, so I want to make that very clear. A lot of people think that it also gets forgiven. It does not.
And to clarify too, so for nonprofits, that interest rate I think is a little bit lower, right?
It is. Yeah, it's actually 1 point lower. That's right. It's 2.75.
Okay.
Yeah, so for nonprofits, I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you. So for nonprofits, it's 2.75%, but there is no forgiveness portion to this. The primary criteria of this is obviously you had to be in a business before January 30th. You have to have suffered some sort of economic loss. And then thirdly, they're going to run a credit check on you. SBA will actually run a credit check on you and make sure, one, that you have a valid Social Security number, that you're real, both to curb any sort of cybersecurity fraud and the like, and then secondly, that you've from what I've seen, that you don't owe significant back taxes. Now, a portion of these funds can be used for paying back taxes, from what I've seen and understand. But so long as you're up to date, and most folks haven't paid their 2019 taxes, they've received an extension. But just so long as you don't owe 3, 5, 6 years of back taxes, you're essentially going to be qualified. Okay. Now that sounds easy enough. The challenge, though, is that since SBA got so overwhelmed by this, and again, this is no fault. I don't want to. This is nothing against SBA. They're doing fantastic work with the resources they have, but they didn't have the application infrastructure to take on the applications, and then secondly, just the pure volume of applicants that came in just overwhelmed the system. So. To give you a snapshot, once you go and apply, and I'll give you the link, I'll put it in the chat function here, or in the chat box here. Once you apply, you really aren't going to hear from anybody, email or otherwise, for about 3 to 4 weeks, and it's inching closer to 5 weeks, okay? When you do hear from somebody, you're going to get an email from SBA that says, and this is what I'm seeing with clients that we've helped. If you do have employees, it seems like they're making them higher priority, and they're actually getting responses faster. So if you indicate on your application that you have employees, you're going to get an email that says, thank you for applying, and it's going to be from an SBA.gov email address. Thank you for applying. The EIDL program, disaster loan. Here's the parameters. There's $1,000 per employee grant. They don't call it a grant, but it's a loan advance / forbearance that they're granting per employee. And then they'll give you a number like, okay, you indicated that you had 3 employees, therefore you qualify for $3,000, something or another. After you receive that email, what I've experienced and what I've seen with clients is that within about a week, 5 business days, you get a call from the SBA, and the SBA agent on the other line verifies who they are. They ask you for a confirmation number. So after you apply for EIDL, you get a pretty long confirmation. I want to say it's almost 16 digits. They ask you to confirm that. And then that person kind of becomes your quote unquote loan agent. Okay. They go over some basic information. what are your business expenses? How much has business been impacted by COVID? And I've had a handful of clients so far who have been essentially approved right on the spot.
Oh, wow.
One thing that I will encourage your viewers to do is if you have a freeze on your credit report for theft protection, you need to remove that freeze, because folks that have that theft protection freeze, SBA is not able to run a credit report, and therefore they're getting pushed to the back of the line. Now, again, that's not official, but that's just what I'm seeing from clients, okay? So I would do a temporary unfreeze for at least the next 90 days or so. So after that person talks about what you'll qualify for, you essentially, they say that they'll be in touch with essentially loan documents and the like. That's where it's been getting quite murky, because I have not seen one client who has been awarded the actual EIDL loan. Okay, not one. And I've talked to literally hundreds of clients, so not one. I have, on the other hand, seen clients that have been awarded the $1,000 advance per employee, and some faster than others. It's looking like that time frame is anywhere from 3 weeks all the way up to 6 weeks. The folks that you talk to when they call you at SBA, if you ask them about the EIDL loan advance, they're going to tell you that they don't have anything to do with that. It's a separate department that's actually dealing with that. However, there is no department phone number that you can call, people that you can call to say, check on my EIDL advance. Just to be clear, if you do have employees, you'll be able to qualify for $1,000 per employee. That is called a quote unquote loan advance, but you do not have to repay that, okay? Up to $10,000 maximum. If you don't have any employees, you're not going to qualify for any of it.
So in the EIDL, that is a loan through SBA. You don't apply for that through a lender, like the Paychecks Protection Program.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So this money is flowing to SBA, and Treasury is actually the one that's cutting the check. Okay. So that's where money is coming from.
Okay. And I understand that also there was for people that applied on the SBA site before, was it March 30th? They have to reapply because they changed the process. So if you've been wondering, am I getting an advance? Is anyone going to call me ever? You might want to look at that date, correct?
You do. And the differentiation is that it's a very clear that one of it is like a 15 to 16 question. You go check a box, enter in your address and information. The process before that was you had to download PDFs and upload them to a box account at the SBA site. If you did the latter, uploaded the forms, PDFs, you go apply for the EIDL directly through the SBA website, because more likely than not, just by volume, you're just not going to get processed. Give me 5 seconds. I'm going to close my door real quick.
No problem. So if you guys are just hopping on and you're a small business owner and you have recently applied for the Paychecks Protection Program and or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, we have Gil Gonzalez here who's with us, who is an economic incentive expert. He understands government grants, and what has seemed like a ever-changing process for us, for small business owners, to access these monies that we very much need. But as Gil pointed out earlier, it's really important to recognize that the SBA has went from 0 to 100 overnight, and while there may have been hiccups, they really have done a great job. Gil, we do have some people that have some questions that I want to ask. But before we go into that, can you just explain what the PPP program or the Paycheck Protection Program is?
Yes. So, and just so you know, I'm going to double check this, but I am not entirely sure. The EIDL program right now, when the money's expired, I want to say last week, there was, you can't go on and actually submit an application as of right now. Obviously, I think the president signed the legislation on Thursday or Friday. I would expect that is going to be back up and running sometime this week. Now, and I'll dive into PPP in a second, but if you go to the SBA website now, I don't even believe the portal is open for you to apply. out of the 484 billion that was allocated through this last funding round, 50 billion of that is being dedicated towards EIDL loans, and 10 billion of that is being allocated towards the loan advances. That's that up to $10,000 / $1,000 per employee. Okay, so so the reason why I bring that up is you want to make sure that you apply for that as soon as the portal opens, because those monies are going very fast.
Right. So we applied very early on, and I was able, actually, I am savvy. I know a thing or two. I know lots of people, and it was still really hard for me to figure things out because I'm also running a business, right? So you're adding all these additional hours of just researching things. And I was able to call, I put these numbers up. I was able to call the Santa Clarita and San Fernando Valley Small Business Development Center that is ran by the SBA, but hosted by College of the Canyons here in our district. And they actually asked me for my confirmation number and said, good, we're pretty sure that you probably got in just in time. So if you have that number, you may want to call one of either our Simi Valley Economic Development Office, the number's on the screen here, as well as our local SBA office, and just give them a call and talk about maybe your confirmation number. That's if you're having a hard time contacting the SBA yourself.
That's right. Now, SBA has done a large hiring spree as of late, so there's actually an 800 number, and I'll give you that as well, and you can actually go through and check on your EIDL loan application or talk to a live individual. What they are telling you is that if you applied more recently than 4 weeks ago, they're going to tell you to wait another week or so. So I would just encourage you to do that. But those are two good resources as well that Suzette just posted.
Okay. And then, so our first question here is from Augustine Prieto Castillo. He is a small business owner here in Santa Clarita. He owns California Bakery. I'll read his question in just a second, but he is a small Latino business owner too. And whether it is the EIDL or the PPP, I read something in the paper today that was saying that, upwards of 90% of Latino or minority-owned businesses have not been able to access this opportunity. So one, I'd like for you to give, some minority business owners that some advice on how to access, any of this money that's much needed. But Augustine's question is, I have a confirmation number for the application for the emergency funds, initial 10K and the loan to follow, but I have been trying to log in or find something about my application to the PPP. Also cannot get any information back. How can I get some information back? So pretty much it's just been crickets for him.
Yeah. So again, there's two different pots of money and two different ways to access and apply for those funds. And then obviously two different follow-up methods for checking on your respective applications. So Augustine, good question. And you're dealing with a similar situation that just millions of others are dealing with right now. So for EIDL, we're going to post a link where you can actually call as well as go check on the status online for your EIDL application. Again, I want to do a quick caveat though, is that if you applied within the last 90 days, or I'm sorry, 30 days, let's just call it 4 weeks, you're likely not going to have a substantive update. If you applied 5-6 weeks ago, they're likely going to be able to give you a little bit more information. You will see the emergency funds advance before you will see an EIDL loan. That's just what I'm experiencing with clients. That's just that process is moving much faster. But again, Augustine, if you have employees, you applied for the advance, you'll likely see $1,000 per employee on the loan advance / forgivable grant. That's what people are calling it. Within 3 to 4 weeks of applying for EIDL. If you have not seen it within 3 to 4 weeks of applying for EIDL, I would be concerned, and I would be trying to track down folks at SBA as soon as possible. So, so Suzette, is it okay if I move into PPP now?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so PPP is a different animal in that, just as the name describes, it's the Paycheck Protection Program. So Congress and the president passed this bill in order to protect paychecks, quite frankly. They want to do what they can to curb layoffs and obviously putting people on unemployment. It's been a little bit of a stumble out of the blocks when they first launched the program, but it's getting much smoother now. As you can see, they just allocated another $321 billion program dollars to the program. To PPP on top of the previous $349 billion. So PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, I'm going to go over the basic parameters, how to apply, and then once you apply, what to expect. So the basic parameters are that you are a small business, you have been in business since January 30th of this year. You have at least one W-2 employee, or in some cases, if you're an S Corp and you're paying yourself, you can still apply for PPP. So if you have 1099 workers and you're doing a lot of contract work, PPP really isn't going to be the program for you outside of applying for yourself. So I'll talk about how 1099s and independent contractors can apply for PPP on their own rather. But for those companies that have employees, like let's use Augustine's Bakery, they're in the Valley. If you have 3 employees, what PPP is, they will let you borrow up to $10 million, but what is going to be 2.5 times your payroll, your average monthly payroll. Okay, so let's just take your average monthly payroll of let's just say, $10,000, and you 2.5 times that. That's going to be $25,000. Okay, so that's what they will let you borrow, in addition to borrowing monies to help pay for operating expenses such as rent, mortgage. Mortgage interest, and again, when I say payroll, you got to throw all of your benefits in there. That's your health insurance, that's your payroll taxes, that's your 401ks or any sort of benefits or perks to that. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell. The advantage of PPP over EIDL is that the funds can be completely forgiven so long as you use 75% or more of the funds on those aforementioned items. Okay, so the aim is to help you operate, get through this hump, this economic hump, which we hope is more like a V rather than a U, to make sure that you're paying your employees, keeping them on the payroll, and then the federal government will actually forgive that loan if you pay for those employees to be employed to a certain extent, right? For up to 8 weeks of employment. So that's it in a nutshell. They do not base it off of any sort of credit score or collateral. So what they are going to base it primarily off of, and I'll go into the application in a second because it's a relatively involved application. They are going to base it off of what your current revenues were, how they were affected, what your payroll was. So they're going to expect to have you're going to have your P&L, your forecasted financial projections and the like. And I'll send you a checklist of everything that most PPP banks are going to ask for.
Awesome.
Okay. So now
I'll pause right there. So anybody that's listening right now, if you want to email me at Suzette@SuzetteValadares.com, all of the links and the information that Gil is sending us, we will make sure to get emailed over to you.
Yes, absolutely. Here's what so the application process. So how do you apply, and then what to expect after you apply? So it's a 7A program. That's what it really is. It's an SBA 7A program, but called a 7A, kind of a 7A light, in that it's not having many of the other underwriting requirements that SBA traditionally has for 7A. Like I said, I'll email Suzette the list of what you need to get prepared to apply for it. Some folks you're going to fall into, so there's folks that want to apply now who haven't applied. There's folks who have applied and probably haven't heard anything back. And then there's folks that probably got on a waiting list and they really don't know where they are in the queue. Okay, so I'm going to address all three just briefly, if that's okay. So I'll start with the folks that got on, maybe you bank with B of A or Chase and you heard that they were backlogged, or Wells Fargo. Despite how you feel about your bank, again, I'm going to say everybody's doing their best to move these programs through. I have friends that work at Wells Fargo and B of A, and they are working their tails off to process these loans and get assistance. So what I would say is, if you got on a queue but you have yet to submit an application, you need to, as soon as you get off here, call your banker or your relationship manager and say, I want to apply for PPP. If you're with one of the larger banks, they probably have a portal or link that they're going to direct you to. There's going to be a very specific checklist that they're going to ask. It's going to contain many of the items that Suzette's going to send you after this, almost to a T, because that's where I'm gathering my information. And then once you have that documentation, you submit it. They will give you a submission number / confirmation number, and just some behind the scenes kind of a look behind the curtain. Once they have all of your information, SBA requires them to process that loan and upload it to something called ETRAN. ETRAN is actually the portal that communicates from the lending institution to SBA, okay? Once they submit all that, and again, I'm not an SBA pro, but I've been doing this for a while, but once they submit that, SBA essentially says this loan is a good SBA-backed 7A loan. Then you'll get a formal kind of approval number, if you will, from your bank relatively soon, okay? For those folks that do not have an approval number right now, your goal is to get an approval number, because this money is going to run out very quickly. I'd say probably within 7 days. So you need to do whatever you can to get your approval number, because a confirmation number or, hey, we have your stuff on file, is not an approval number. You need a loan approval number with a loan amount, with loan documents being drafted that are going to be in your possession with a certain amount of time, so that you are funded for this program, okay? If you applied and the money ran out, you're probably in queue to get funded, and they're probably putting your information into ETRAN as we speak. Again, call your lender, say, where is my application? Has it been submitted to the SBA, to ETRAN? Am I in the pipeline to get approved? They will give you a yes or no. Maybe they'll just tell you, we don't know. For those of you who want to apply and your lender is backed up or whatever, I am happy to introduce you to 2 or 3 lenders that are accepting applications right now. And in fact, that's who I refer all my clients to, because their portals are open. They've even been open since this process went down, and they're processing loans now. So I'm happy to connect you with some of those folks. The last thing is most importantly is that these folks are juggling a lot of balls right now with political pressure, business pressure, and the like. The better prepared you are before you go apply, the more successful you're going to be, just like with anything, right? So the documents and information that we send over to you, just make sure to get on top of that as quickly as possible, because if you send information, this is what I've seen happen with 3 lenders already, is folks, when applied, submitted all the documents, they thought that they had everything submitted, money ran out, and then their lenders came back and go, oh, you were missing, this file or this piece of paperwork. And really then that's, they've already burned 5-6 weeks. So you don't want to do that. You make sure that you're getting all of that in one. So once the upside with PPP though, and I'll just say this plainly, is that it's moving relatively smoothly now. There's much more need than there are funds, but the infrastructure is there. Once you submit, I'm seeing folks get funded within a week, 2 weeks max. So once you have your paperwork in order, submit it with the right lender. I'm seeing folks getting funded relatively quickly.
Okay. I ran into those problems early on where my bank, which is a smaller credit union, didn't have their application process in line early on during the first round, and then by that time, actually early on, the bigger banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, all of those links were only helping their own customers. So for some reason, your bank is their application process is closed or whatnot. I do have some links at the bottom here. I know PayPal is also accepting applications. They brought in the approved lenders for this program. So get your paperwork in order and apply now. I'll just to go through some of the comments here. I know that Steve Ward asked, or it was more of a comment, that banks are saying that this money is going to be gone in the next 2 to 3 days, because people are, I would imagine that most businesses who have been trying to gather this paperwork or apply to the previous monies that were available have their ducks in a row this time. So they're going to be applying more efficiently, I would imagine. So, which is why I actually brought you on so quickly. We just called you last night because the money was released yesterday and I didn't want to wait because people need this information now. And Crystal said, I applied through Wells Fargo for the PPP as soon as they posted the website and have been told I'm in queue. I have also been told if I try applying through another bank, my application will get thrown out. What do you have to say about that? Is that true, or how do they know? How would they know?
Yeah, I don't want to say any official thing on that. What I would say though is that how do I want to say this? You need to apply to get funded. That's what I would just say. And being in queue doesn't mean you're getting funded. So I would just certainly make sure if you have a loan application number and more importantly an approval, then you are getting funded. I don't want to comment, and again, I should probably said this from the start, Suzette, is that I'm not an attorney. This isn't legal advice. This isn't tax advice. I'm not a CPA. I've just been doing this way too long in terms of incentives. I've written a book on incentives. So unfortunately, I know a lot about incentives and the Chicago Bears and 10 minutes.
We'll get to that in just a second because this is kind of a longer Facebook Live than I typically do, but it's just very much needed information. I have a question for you because this kind of
Suzette, can I just real quick, because I want to make sure that we get Crystal asked. So Crystal, to speak specifically, you need to call your relationship manager and or banker at Wells and ask them where you are in the process. Even ask them, say, look, have my documents been uploaded to E-Tran, whatever you want to ask them, because if you're in a queue, that isn't an approval. So just with anything, until you get the approval, you want to make sure you're doing all that you can to move the process along. And then more importantly, that they have shared with you that your file is complete, because just being in queue doesn't mean that your file is complete either. And the last thing you want to do is hear on Thursday of next week that the money's gone and that you didn't have your X document that was supposed to be uploaded.
So for as a nonprofit, one of the questions that is on multiple application is what percentage of ownership do you have in the company? And nonprofits are not owned by anyone, they're owned by the public. What's the appropriate answer there?
So that is a good question. So I believe they are defaulting to I think they were asking also controlling board interest. So at the end of the day, they need to know who the buck stops with, because, you know, I have a nonprofit as well. I have a 501c3. And with our application, we would have put myself and then a couple of the other directors who essentially have controlling interest of the organization. To get an exact answer, though, I'd probably need to do a little bit more digging.
And and then I asked the question mostly out of fear. Are nonprofits going to get kicked out of this funding because they're not part owner? And I think that the banks will understand that. I think you're right, that as long as you're the controlling manager, who the controlling manager is able to actually make decisions on behalf of the business.
That's right.
Throwing us off for a loop there. And then, so I do want to move on to, okay, so in the very unfortunate event that, you know, a small business is trying to stay afloat, does not apply or receive or isn't approved for any of these resources or monies, what can they do? I know your expertise and your background is in government incentives, which includes grants. I mean, are we going to see a lot of private, nonprofits inject some money for businesses? Is there government grants? What should people be looking at now to kind of stay a step ahead?
Yeah, so two things that whenever I talk about incentives or just, financing of a business and the like, is you got to look at two main drivers: your operational expenses and then your revenues. And your revenues hopefully are more than your operational expenses, and then hopefully you're deriving some sort of profit from that, right? So with that said, is I always talk to small businesses is, yes, you want to look at the grants, you want to look at the loans, which obviously is debt. You know, there's even organizations that are out there looking at private equity right now, although that dynamic has certainly changed due to this COVID situation. But first and foremost is how do you reduce your operational expenses and still maintain in business? So first and foremost is look for tax credits, look for tax deductions. The less money you have to pay to the government is more money that you can put into payroll or buying a new oven or whatever it is, or transitioning your company to an e-commerce business as well. So always look for tax deductions and tax credits, because that's going to reduce those operational expenses and less money that you're going to have to cut a check to the government for, and again, reinvest those monies back into your business. So in California, there's several tax credits, not as robust as maybe some other states like in Texas and Arizona, but there are tax credits out there. There's a program called the Cal Competes Tax Credit Program. There's a partial sales tax exemption program. So if you had purchased equipment recently, there's grants for, or I don't want to call them grant, but they're money's called employment training panel dollars. So that if you need to train employees, and again, I know a lot of companies aren't necessarily hiring right now, but the more that you can take from public resources that are out there that you've already contributed to, because these are your tax dollars, this isn't the government's money, these are your tax dollars, and the more of course you can turn around and invest those monies back into your business. So that's on the tax credit / deduction side. There are private grants that are coming out. In fact, if you wouldn't mind, you can send out a link to a prize we downloaded, and our platform goes out and scrapes the web and is grabbing all the new private grants as well as government grants and programs that are coming out every day. So there are private grants. You can go to our website, you can download a report, and it's going to show you all the national COVID-19 grants. There's stuff that's coming out from Facebook, Google, LISC, in partnership with Verizon, which is a CDFI. So there is stuff out there. The last thing that I would say is on the financing side, yes, there are government loan programs. The governor's office just announced something through the iBank, which is a loan program for companies that were missing out on PPP and EIDL. Excuse me. And you'll have that information as well in the email that I sent you. So there are loan programs out there. It just really depends on where you are. Statewide, there's a couple of them. And then really depending on what city you're in, like for instance, San Jose is talking about developing a program. Fresno just launched a $750,000 Save Our Small Business loan program, which is forgivable. So depending on where you are, what city you're in, there's certainly stuff out there. Like I said, we're happy to help and guide you through what is out there, and more importantly, how do you apply and be successful in getting awarded those dollars. So
awesome. Yes, there is. I know LA County did have a grant available, as well as LA City, I think, allocated $56 million. I would expect to be seeing more stuff to come down through the state, city, and local levels. On top of, well, we could carry this conversation on forever. But before I let you go, give people your website address where they can find you and your book and what your book's about.
Oh, yeah. In fact, you know what? I'm happy to send everybody a copy of our book, so I'm not even going to bore you with the title, because it's way too long. But in short, it's a how-to and where-to find guide for government incentives for all 50 states. So I wrote this last year. It's at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. But I've really been sending a lot of small businesses, publishers, copies of it because they're affordable for me to buy, and I can just ship them off for $2. So at no cost to you. So if you're interested, I'm happy to send you a copy of our book. All of that information, though, is also on our website, which is aprise.us. So a prize with one P, aprise.us, and I'll post it right here. And if you wouldn't mind, we are a startup. We are trying, I am mission-based. We're mission-based. We're here. I just messed up my website, sorry. We are mission-based. We're here to help small businesses. That's the reason why I started the company. Please go to our website. You can find all the information. There's a ton of free information there too. So just go download the report, take it, pass it along to other small businesses. You don't have to engage us to help you apply for many of these programs. I'd say 95% of these you can apply for on your own. You don't need any assistance. One important point too is you should never be paying anybody for any information or application assistance for SBA programs. Okay, there are just so many resources out there that are no cost, of which Suzette just mentioned two really good ones. So if anybody's saying, hey, I can help you get this loan, just pay me $300 or $500, just turn around and run as fast as you can, and make sure to reach out to Suzette to get those no-cost resources, because those folks are better than the ones that are out there trying to charge fees. Okay.
Yeah, I'm putting these up again. The Simi Valley, we have the Economic Development Office, and Santa Clarita, we have the Small Business Development Center, hosted by Colleges Canyon, which is officially an SBA site. And honestly, little questions like my question about which box do I mark, or just getting on their email list and then sending you resources. If you're not already doing that, please do that. If you have questions, please put them in the comments thread, and I will go through and connect with Gil and make sure that we answer all of them if we haven't answered them already. And share this this post and this live feed, because there are so many small businesses out there that do need access to this information. Yeah. And like I mentioned, specifically our minority-owned businesses as well. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for hopping on with me, Gil. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful. I know it was a little long today, but I mean, this is a very confusing process. I know that many of you are either going through or don't even know where to start. So hopefully this is helpful. Tomorrow, I will be talking a little bit more about what candidates are doing in the community to help their community during this COVID-19 campaign world, if you can even call it a campaign world. So tune in tomorrow. We're going to put out some information via email as well. So if you're not signed up for my email, go to my website at SuzetteValladares.com to sign up for my email. And here's another plug for Operation Childcare. As you know, I'm collecting disinfectant wipes, hand sanitizer, masks, gloves, disinfectant spray to make sure that our childcare providers can stay open and serve our essential workforce. These items are really hard to find. If you can donate, please donate them at KHTS on Main Street in Newhall, or at Simi Valley Supervisor Bob Huber's office in Simi Valley. It's on Enchanted Way. I don't have the address, but make sure I get that to you guys. Thanks for tuning in.